a long time to play the Citadel. While most of the reception to the game was positive, there was plenty of negativity surrounding the game's aesthetics, specifically the inclusion of anime waifus as characters in the game's universe, including the fact that when you kill enemies in this game, they explode into bloody chunks, including the decapitated heads of said anime waifus. Some took this inclusion as an indicator that this was a fetish game, and for that reason, I actually stayed away from it. However, I was but a fool, because the Citadel is certainly not a fetish game. In fact, it is a simple yet incredibly solid first-person shooter that takes influence from games like Doom, Wolfenstein 3D, and Marathon. But even putting it that way doesn't do the game justice, because the Citadel is so much more than that. From Japanese developer Dokura Mori, the Citadel looks and in many ways plays like a boomer shooter. However, it takes a more realistic approach to ballistics, because you see, bullet drop-off is a thing in this game. And when sniping enemies from across the map, for instance, you have to account for that, and aim above their heads. In addition to this, weapons like the Magnum and Shotgun are reloaded one bullet or shell, respectively, at a time. And magazine-fed guns have a mechanic that when you reload before the magazine is empty, that magazine drops to the ground and you lose the unspent ammunition, meaning that tactical reloading can be a slightly more difficult decision than in many other shooters. Taking place over 30 levels, including 6 boss fights, this game has a very unique art style. The combination of anime and cold metallic corridors makes for a very appealing but also oppressive aesthetic. The Citadel is a cold, monochrome hellscape that wants you dead. You are an unwelcome visitor in this gargantuan structure that is dominated by looming brutalist architecture. And the enemies aren't very big fans of you either. The storytelling is somewhat vague, but what I do understand is that you play as a cyborg waifu that needs to fight her way through several cyborg cultists and robots, and free 6 fallen angels, which you do by killing them. These angels act as the aforementioned boss fights, and during these moments the game even turns into more of a bullet hell experience that can be quite intense, challenging, and most of all fun. They really are solid boss fights across the board. The boss fights aren't the only challenging parts of this game though, as you are definitely a glass cannon. Most enemies die quickly and brutally, but so too can you. Fortunately, there are blood packs to heal yourself that can either be picked up in the environment or purchased from a vendor or even vending machines found in some levels. Which brings me to another unique aspect of the Citadel's gameplay, and that would be its health system, specifically food. Yes, this is another more realistic gameplay mechanic, and that is that you need to keep yourself fed. Whatever your hunger level is at any given time, blood packs cannot heal you beyond that same level, which means that you need to eat enough in order to bring yourself to full health. And your stamina is tied to this as well. Much like the blood packs, food packs can be either picked up or purchased, and stamina can also be replenished with O2 canisters. In fact, there is an upgrade that allows you to overdose on O2 canisters, which gives you temporary bullet time, a mechanic that I only really used during the later boss fights, but I certainly could have used it more often. Combat in this game, by the way, is brutal, violent, and explosive, and the crazy weapons attribute to this by how truly great the shooting feels. To start out, you have an axe that I admittedly never used, but there's also a magnum that remains powerful throughout the entire game, especially if you land headshots. My favorite thing about the magnum, though, is that it can be upgraded to load rockets that do insane damage and are great against the Citadel's bigger, tougher enemy types. Then, of course, what shooter can be great without a great shotgun? And the Citadel has not just one, but two of these. The first is your standard pump-action shotty, called the blunderbuss, but the even more devastating variant is known as the shock hammer. And god damn, this jibbing machine feels amazing to fire. After that, there is the auto rifle, my preferred workhorse during my playthrough, and although the primary fire is quite effective at close to medium range, the laser alt fire is one of the best fire modes in the entire game, as it electrifies and blows enemies to bits. In addition to this, there is also a sniper rifle in the weapon lineup known as the whale gun. Now, this is great for jibbing all of the lower tier enemies in the game, and is also pretty useful against the larger enemies, even the large robot enemies. Of course, you can't have a Doom-inspired shooter without a chain gun and rocket launcher, and the Citadel has these as well. The chain gun is fantastic because it doesn't suffer from the bullet drop that many of the other guns contend with, and the rocket launcher is suitably destructive against the large robotic enemies especially. And there is a second variant of this weapon that can load up to 4 rockets at once. Beyond that, there are also grenades that you can throw into the fray, of which you can hold a lot of at once, 30 to be exact. And you also have access to some very Half-Life inspired satchel charges that could possibly be the most powerful explosive devices in the entire game, as I learned that these will blow up some massive robots with just one charge. The only weapon that I felt was a bit redundant was the SMG. It's not bad, it does have a fast fire rate, but I really only use this gun to save ammo for my auto rifle. These weapons, I should also note, can be upgraded at the vendor, although one of my complaints is that you can't tell exactly what the upgrades do. There's only an upgrade title, so you have to basically just assume, which does kind of suck. What's crazy, though, is that these aren't even all of the weapons, because there are also 2 temporary use power weapons. The first is the Heavy Bolter, which is basically just a power fantasy-inducing minigun. And the Hyper Blaster, which behaves like a powerful plasma rifle. To top all of that off, you also have the ability to lean left and right around corners, which is a great way to avoid taking damage. But there are plenty of times when constantly moving around while avoiding projectiles is the best way to play, which means that the gameplay is kind of a blend of your classic boomer shooter with a more tactical shoot, especially when factoring in all of the ballistics mechanics. There is also a great deal of platforming in the Citadel, and if you don't have any extra lives, which are rare by the way, or you haven't activated a respawn point, falling to your death means a level restart. And this is the way it goes for any death, which makes every combat encounter and every jump across a bottomless pit that much more asshole clenching. And this tension is a great piece of the puzzle, especially when the Citadel is already a pretty challenging experience. Some of my favorite moments were the sections when you get to jump into a giant mech. And these parts of the game allow you to breathe and casually mow down your foes without a care in the world. Yeah, I really love mech sections in first-person shooters. So that pretty much sums up the Citadel. It is a very unique and engaging shooter with a lot to offer. It's honestly a shame that it is kind of an obscure game, and I hope that shedding more light on it can get more people to check it out. It came out in 2020, and yeah, it took me a while to get around to this game, so hopefully more people can do the same thing that I did. There is also a sequel coming out called Beyond Citadel, and now I can safely say that I am beyond excited for its release. With that, thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please remember to like and subscribe, and dislike it if you absolutely hated it. As always, enjoy the rest of your day.